Welcome to the MeidasTouch podcast. Ben, Brett, and Jordy. We're not going anywhere, even though it's the holidays.
We're still here. You're stuck with us. It's the holidays, but we're happy to be stuck with you. We're not stuck with you. We're happy to be hanging with you. I mean, it's really an honor to spend our holidays with you and every day with you online and in all of our chats. You are what makes the Meidas Mighty movement possible. And we hope you're having a great holiday. Hope everybody had a great Christmas. What did you guys do for Christmas?
Oh, well, I got to spend it with family, which was always great and important. My girlfriend Sochi's family. And so we had an incredible time there and had the Christmas tree. All of Sochi's nieces and nephews and cousins were all there.
I love that band. We're definitely not pre-recording this show. So, I mean,
this show's not pre-recorded.
Exactly coming at you live. Like, listen, I could tell you, you know how? Let me tell you what happened this weekend. Sunday, Chuck Todd made a complete fool out of himself on Meet the Press. I mean, did you guys see what Chuck Todd said? I mean, I cannot even believe it.
What are you calling him?
Chuck Todd?
No, that's not his name. His name's Cuck Todd.
Cuck Todd. Oh, man. Well, if you saw him Sunday, you know what I'm talking about. And don't even get me started on the latest from Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Those two are just totally out of control. I just don't even know what to even do about that at this point. And Republicans just keep getting crazier. And the thing is that Fox News just keeps going off the deep end with their conspiracy theories. It's just insane. Trump is getting crazier. We're getting closer to indictments on January 6th, and things are moving.
And like Brett said, the show is definitely not pre-recorded before the holiday and Christmas. But we do have
I don't think Ben likes this bit.
Ben hates this bit, but we do have an incredible guest today. Ben, who are we speaking with today?
We have Stephanie Winston Wolkoff.
Let's go.
Joining the podcast.
New interview.
Now, you know, one of the things that I always like to profile on MeidasTouch are people who stepped up, people who exercised a great deal of courage in very difficult circumstances when they didn't have to. You know, it's why, you know, to me, someone like a Michael Cohen, you know, someone like a Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, who found themselves confronted in very difficult situations. If you look at most of the people in Trump and Melanias and all of their inner circle, mostly every single one of them stayed, continued to kind of aid and abet, continued to deflect. And
that would be the path of least resistance. That would be the easy thing to do. I mean, at that point, these people are getting paid. They're by the White House. They have the power of the most important office in the world, the White House. And they decide, you know what? I need to step up and I need to do something.
For my country. For my country is the biggest thing, because they could have very easily just bent the knee and kissed the ring. That is Donald Trump. But no, they spoke out. They knew what was happening, and that administration was not right, and they did the right thing. And honestly, it cost them a lot of their livelihood, as we'll hear with Stephanie in this interview coming up.
Here's one of the things I like to think about. When I think about people like Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, when I think about people like Michael Cohen, when I think of other people in history who have taken a courageous stand and told the truth, talked about difficult situations they were in. You always see the moments that are on the press, right? You see the moments of them walking into court or walking on the street surrounded by cameras. But what you never get to see is when they're all alone. When they're all alone, getting changed in the morning, when they're all alone, in their bedroom, in the living room, sweating at night, feeling that level of pain and fear of being the subject of death threats, of having the most powerful office in the most powerful nation in the entire history of mankind, aimed directly at you as an individual. And we think about the different stresses and issues that we all go through in the day, and we all have that courage inside us, that exists there. The courageous Meidas Mighty follower who fights valiantly with their parents. Thank you, Jordy, as I'm doing that.
Sneezing the truth. That's just great podcast content.
It's a great, and like
Sneezing
doing
the truth.
Does that stay in the pod?
That definitely stays in the pod, but it's fine. The point that I'm making is that we all have that courage inside of us. Jordy, you're gonna sneeze in my face as I'm like doing this like heartfelt view. But
I was sneezing the truth. You never heard of that?
We all have that courage inside of us. And it's important that each and every one of you knows that you can be someone who does good, who does great, who's happy, and to fight for what's right. And before bringing in Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, I want to give a brief message from one of our sponsors.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals? Look, for me, Twitter is a cesspool. And day in and day out, my brothers and I get the most disgusting threats. And quite frankly, it could weigh me down, from time to time. So that's why I really like BetterHelp, because BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You'll be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not a self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online. There's a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. The service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime, send a message to your therapist. You'll get a timely and thoughtful response. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change therapists if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit their website, read some of their testimonials. Honestly, they match up with my personal experience with them. The service is just incredible. Visit betterhelp.com/Meidas. That's better, HELP, and join over 2 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they're recruiting additional therapists in all 50 states. That's wild. Special offer for MeidasTouch podcast listeners. We get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Meidas. That's better, HELP.com/MEIDAS. Check it out today. And now back to the show.
Welcome back to the MeidasTouch podcast. We're joined by none other than the Meidas Mighty favorite, Stephanie Winston Wolkoff. Stephanie, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Normally I give the intro for the guest, but everyone knows who you are. But I'll just give a shout out to your book as the author of Melania and Me, The Rise and Fall of My Friendship with the First Lady, #1 New York Times bestseller. But you're so well known to the Meidas Mighty, one of our most listened to podcasts. And everyone was saying, can you please, before the year ends, have Stephanie back on? We loved her so much. And all the great work you're doing is so appreciated by us and everyone. So I just wanted to say that at the top of the podcast.
I really appreciate that, Fred. Honestly, you guys are amazing. I'm honored to be on the show again. And you've made such a big difference in the lives of so many by just, every day, the truth that you tell us and share with us, and the investigative work that you do is incredible. And it's not done by enough people. So I'm most grateful. And I know a lot of people that I know are too. So thank you to the three of you for putting your lives aside and making a difference.
And you did the same. What we like to highlight here is, individual acts of courage and, when people reach a breaking point, and also a breaking point of saying, I need to do something. Like what's going on here is wrong. What's happening needs to stop. And I'm willing to make sacrifices to help other people, and I can make a difference. And our listeners know kind of our background and our story of how we were together during the pandemic and just kept seeing these Trump press conferences over and over again. And we were like, hey, we need to do something. What was the moment for you, working with Melania or being there? Like, when was the moment to you where you were like, you know what, like, I need to do something. I need to take a stand. This is not right. And at great personal peril, I'm going to do something here that I know will benefit others, even if I'm going to expose myself to great personal harm.
I'm really glad you asked me that, because I still think there's a misconception as to when I decided to make a stand. And it was at the end of 2017. I was still working in the White House for Melania. And I was asked to personally create a one-pager that was made up of what I wanted to see in the press regarding the $107 million inaugural funds and how it was spent. And when I saw the machinations of what was going on behind the scenes between the PIC, the Presidential Inauguration Committee, and the White House, and all of the inner circle, really close to the former president and first lady, who I considered at the time friends, and I felt I was only protecting Melania by sharing all of the information with her that I knew on a daily basis. I hired a lawyer because it was after I had actually gone to speak to Stefan Posentino, who was the White House ethics lawyer at the time, who then went and worked at Trump Organization when Mueller had requested for him to come appear before the committee. And the way to get out of that was to go work at Trump Org. I had actually divulged to him what I had witnessed, what I had experienced, what I was, seeing on a day-to-day basis. And I was really nervous.
And so the Presidential Inaugural Committee and some of the mischief that went on there, I know there's some things you can talk about, some things you can't talk about, but in many ways, kind of visually, it was one of the, definitely it was one of the first because it had to be the first, but it was really kind of an oh shit moment where you could visually see the foreign influence, individuals and foreign actors coming into Trump Tower to, kind of work mischief, and seeing those visuals. I mean, some of them were literally on C-SPAN. They didn't do a great job even like hiding who was coming in. And it was just this moment of, holy shit, the United States of America is for sale right now. And Trump is putting all of our safety and all of our security at risk so that he could, basically do what the Trumps have always done and raise money for themselves. And so I just think more attention needs to be paid to it. What's your view generally about why you think it hasn't gotten as much attention recently? I mean, there's been an insurrection, so there could be that.
That's a good reason.
But do you think it's going to take a role more forefront as we go into 2022?
I really do. I mean, the inauguration, look, I've said this before. I was, a novice when it came to politics. I hadn't voted before. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I learned a really hard lesson that you can't say yes to something unless you know who the players are and what you're actually dealing with. I mean, I was a producer. It wasn't, I was asked to produce the inauguration. I saw it as an honor. And going in and out of Trump Tower, to me, I just considered or assumed that all of those foreign people were just tenants, which most of them really are, or they're not. Or again, it didn't, I wasn't putting the pieces together at the time. So what came of Trump Tower for me was an aha moment. Actually, it was when Rick Gates, who has, as we all know, been indicted and convicted, actually had an all access pass to Trump Tower. And I was following him in. And after 15 years of friendship with Melania and actually being her senior advisor and working behind the scenes on her, forward thinking messaging and also producing the inauguration, you would think I would be able to get into Trump Tower, but it wasn't. It was just for, Rick Gates led the pack. Right behind him was, Tom Barrack and a crew of us. So a lot was happening in front of me. I didn't know who Rick was at the time. And when I had told Donald Melania of my concerns, Donald acted as if he didn't know who Rick was either. And to me, I just assumed he was telling me the truth because it's so believable. The inaugural planning is where so much happened behind the scenes. And that's what I had to figure out. And that's actually what I ended up writing the book for. I really didn't know what happened while it was happening because so much was happening at once. So to figure out who the players were and to see, I mean, thankfully I was never in a fundraising meeting. I didn't have access to those meetings. Again, I was the loudmouth. I was the one that everyone wanted to, keep out of the budget meetings. I never had access to the bank accounts. I never had access to the checkbook, but I was definitely calling out all the inconsistencies and inaccuracies and everything that I saw, from budgets to people to venues to vendors to, I mean, I didn't, I would never kept quiet. And the events that took place within the events of the inauguration, and there were 18 that we planned with 3 broadcast productions, were the events that are more important than the actual, as they say, the PIC events, the presidential inauguration events. So it was the meetings behind the meetings. And a lot happened there that no one is aware of. And I wasn't fully aware of it, but when I started connecting the dots and figuring out who was there and when, you start to see a pattern of people within the Trump inner circle that present themselves over and over, and their influence over the president, Ivanka, Jared, really, to me, was such a red flag. And then everything that happened at the Trump Hotel, and the ability to, host events at the hotel, stay at the hotel. At first, I thought maybe we were, Trump was going to be doing this as a, either a write-off or, comping it, quite actually, because that's what I would think most people do. But it was all about inflation and lining their own pockets. And that's when I really, I was once an asset. That's when I became a problem to them, is when I originally, so actually it's before I was even in the White House, throughout the entire planning, throughout the entire planning, I was calling things out, but it was really during the point when the Trump International Hotel DC put a price out of $3.6 million to use the hotel for planning some of the events in honor of the president-elect, in honor of Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric. I couldn't believe that, I think it was the first schedule I was given had 3 or 4 events already listed at the Trump Hotel. I mean, they tried to throw it on me that I wanted the Trump Hotel. And, again, when you start looking at the depositions that took place, there's so much perjury. It's unbelievable. And just dissecting that, I had a really great time reading that 1,000-page deposition regarding the United States Attorney General for the District of Columbia's, case against the presidential inauguration, the Trump Organization, the Trump International Hotel. And I'm sorry, I am just going on and on. There's so much that
it's so wild because, with the perspective now of this being like 5 years removed, it's easy to forget that the criminality from the Trump administration didn't only begin on day 1, but began on day like -100. Like it began actually even before, while they were even planning for the inauguration. That's when the criminality began. You didn't even have to step into the White House. You mentioned some stuff about, you noticed some red flags and some things that people don't even quite know from the day. Is there any moments that stand out in your mind that you might be able to share with us?
Well, I did talk about it, I wrote about it, but to speak about it, it's just that moment of when Donald Trump said to me, when I was sitting in Trump Tower at their dining room table, while Melania was sitting next to me and Donald was standing over us on the other side of the table, and I told him that Rick Gates was basically running the inaugural. And just in the very beginning, it sent me my contract. He looked at me and he goes, "Rick, who's Rick Gates? Rick Gates?" And then he goes off and he looks over and he goes, "That son of a bitch stole $750,000 from me." Now, I knew nothing about who Rick Gates was before, after, during. I actually subsequently have printed out a picture that I pulled up online and made it really big and put it on my desk with Donald in his red tie with Rick standing like 2 inches away from him. And this was before I even got involved. So that's when I was like, oh my God, I really am. Like, I would have given the guy Trump my 2 arms, believing him that he did not know who Rick Gates was. And so I go back to that all the time, but that was a red flag to me that, too much was happening too quickly. And I was brought in to produce 2 events, and those 2 events grew to 18 events. They grew into from, productions of inaugural dinners to broadcast productions that budgets were just pre-approved, numbers that to me I'd never seen before. Luckily for Trump, he had Mark Burnett and Tom Barrack together. The three of them were, three musketeers doing whatever they do in their planning. And I think I was sort of brought into, produce the inauguration, but I also think I was brought in as a backup, that if anything went wrong, there would be someone who would take the fall for everyone. And it actually worked.
You were the scapegoat.
Well, I really was, not only because, but I think because of my friendship with Melania, or I know because of my friendship with Melania, even though it was Ivanka who told Tom Barrack about my work. It was my friendship with Melania that I said yes to produce the inauguration, and even getting involved in this, because I believe that it was an honor to ask to produce the inauguration, but as well as helping a friend who otherwise wouldn't have been able to really say or do much.
I think one of the wild things is, but for your instinct to preserve documents, text messages, emails, all your correspondence, you could have been in criminal trouble for the inauguration, but you were smart. You held on to every text message, everything. And in a world now where we're speaking about text messages often, as we see all these text messages revealed with the January 6th committee, I know that you yourself have some text messages of your own. I saw you recently posted one. I was wondering if you could just elaborate on what this text means. You posted it on December 14th. It was a text. This text was from February 13th, 2018. It says, "We're all set. Moving forward on Thursday. Plan is that Maggie Haberman will run the story on Thursday per Tom B. And they will also then give the package to Hannity and Ingraham, two names who, of course, we're very familiar with over these past couple of weeks, who were also involved in receiving texts throughout January 6th. Could you explain just who sent this text? What is this text about? What's the meaning of it? And why did you feel like it was a good time to post it?
So the Presidential Inauguration Committee chairman was Tom Barrack. That's who Tom B is. Maggie Haberman was the friendly within the White House, the New York Times reporter, journalist, who was going to be given the exclusive as to the release of the Form 990, which is what is given to the Federal Elections Committee as to how $107 million was spent in the planning of the inauguration. That text was sent to me by Heather Martin. Heather Martin was the chief financial officer and treasurer of the Presidential Inauguration Committee, who worked with Douglas Ammerman and Jeff Larson of the RNC. Heather then became the CFO at the White House and oversaw the presidential budgets there. She was someone who I worked with day in and day out. In the planning of the inauguration, she oversaw the budget with Sarah Armstrong. They pre-approved the $25 million that went to inaugural productions. And they then approved the $25 million that went to Hargrove. And as you start going down the 990, that's a whole nother story, and that's for a whole nother day. But they, personally checkmarked the funds that were being used and what they were being used for. I found this really important at the time, obviously, because Hannity and Ingraham are very involved in the White House, but it just shows the public that the plan to move forward in telling the American people for the past year that they've been waiting for, how was $107 million spent to produce these 18 events and why, was a plan of action set up and collaboratively agreed upon by the White House, Hope Hicks, Stephanie Grisham. I mean, you name it. Everyone signed off on this except me. And that's when I needed to be shut up. And that's when I became the front page, the headline news, that it was Melania's friend who received $26 million.
Unbelievable. So even back then, in the very early days, Hannity and Ingraham and these journalists were doing the bidding for Trump and acting as his communications team. So I'm sure you weren't surprised when a week or two ago, those text messages were released where Hannity and Ingraham were basically acting like a crisis communications firm for the White House.
And they've been the crisis communications plan firm, basically. I mean, they really are. And that's, look, Rupert Murdoch is Donald's, bro. Like, he really is. Like, they have a bromance, and they have always work together in whether it be releasing, nude pictures, whether it be a headline about them Melania and Donald getting engaged. I mean, it is so constructed. People think that things happen by chance. Nothing happens by chance with the Trumps, nor with the release of certain
And we
documents.
try to remind our listeners, Stephanie, that, everyone gets focused on Fox News, but Rupert Murdoch owns newspapers throughout the country. He owns throughout the world, tabloids throughout the world, radio stations throughout the world. So when they have a message that they want to get out, they could get it out in a variety of different ways. They could get it out as gossip in a gossip rag. They could get it out as, quote unquote, hard news through a newspaper. They have ways of funneling their information to anybody, basically laundering information directly from the White House.
That wasn't the biggest point, though, I got there, Brett. Though, Stephanie, you believe that they were leaking their own nude photos and that was strategically placed in these papers?
Well, I think that Donald needed the attention to be taken away from him. And if you actually look at the timeline as to when they were released, what was going on with him, you'll see that it was a great deterrent. And that is what, Donald is the master of. It's, shine the light over there so no one really knows what's going on over here. And Melania has been someone that, look, she signed up for this. She knew who she was marrying. She told me a million times over, you can't change someone, don't try. Now with her, NFTs and all the things that she's trying to do, it's like the same thing that Donald does. It's always, she is not only, complicit to all this, but she's an enabler of so many things that happen.
Right.
Did she agree to that? To allowing, Donald to release news? Did she know it was going to happen? That I don't know. Did she know that it happened and that it was something that, and I do write about it in Melania and Me, that Donald and Rupert spent Valentine's Day together. And that Melania told me she's never so romantic. First Valentine's Day in the White House was with Rupert. And I tried desperately to get Melania to go to dinner with Donald because I wanted them to be seen as, this normal couple. I don't know what I was thinking, and I also wanted to make sure that Ivanka and Jared, because they were making such a big deal about it, weren't getting all the attention because Ivanka really wanted to be the first lady. And we all know that. And she was usurping everything. But I thought of Melania, but I really, again, I'm now still talking about protecting the office of the first lady. Right. And so to me, the messaging and forward-thinking statements were about what can I do to help Melania appear to be in more of a, I guess normal isn't the right word, just in a relationship with her husband, which they actually do have a relationship. And I've witnessed it. I mean, I slept at the White House with them. I ate at their dinner table. I mean, they do have their own relationship and they both got what they needed out of this marriage, right? I say it's a transactional marriage. It's more than transactional in the sense that, I mean, Melania, and I do say this too, she had two dynamic decades. I mean, she really didn't know, right? In passing, what was she going to do? Her modeling career really was the cover of Vogue, and that legitimized her as a model. And that legitimized Donald as having a supermodel. But before that, the truth is the truth. There's a lot of inconsistencies everywhere.
Today's program is brought to you by Sole, the sustainable orthopedic footwear company that seeks to bring peace where the ground meets your feet. What's a footbed? Insult, insert, orthotic? Why are orthotics so expensive? What's the fuss anyway? Well, 85% of the population will have one or more foot-related ailments in their lifetime. Plantar fasciitis, a couple other really big medical terms that I can't really pronounce right now.
You were going for it, though. You went for it, Jordy.
I did give it a shot. Shin splints and a lot of these other unsexy ailments can be helped with a footbed. Sole has created a foot bed, as in a great place to rest your soul. That is affordable, customizable, and improves people's everyday foot comfort. Millions of customers rave about this product, and 2/3 of Sole customers have 2 or more pairs of footbeds. That's a lot. Once you know the comfort, pain relief, performance enhancement, and injury prevention benefits of Sole footbeds, you'll want them in every shoe you own. What's more is Sole created its own recycling program, Recork, to collect and upcycle used wine corks to make its products. So far, Recork has collected over 125 million wine stoppers, jeez, that get grounded down and reused into the company's own footbeds and shoes. Guys, circularity exists. Sol has an amazing offer for first-time customers of 50% off through yoursoul.com/Meidas. So you can try Sol for yourself. Promo code is Meidas. We're so confident that you'll love this that we'll also offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. Very hard to go wrong, folks. The MeidasTouch offer is applicable to all items on the Sol store, be it footbeds or footwear. So go to yoursoul.com/Meidas. That's yourSole.com/MEIDAS. So you can try Sol for yourself. Promo code Meidas.
And now back to the show.
So you and Melania obviously had very earnest and candid conversations. Who was her least favorite kid?
I try not to talk about the kids because, respectfully to them, I feel they need to have their privacy, and that's referring to Barron. As far as right,
the rest of them,
yeah.
The rest
I
of them
don't
are
consider.
fine.
No, they're not kids. They are the most unscrupulous. I've never met such. I don't even know the right word to use on air, so I won't go there.
It's a podcast, so you could be uncensored. You could say whatever you want.
Oh, that's true. Okay, so I would definitely say Ivanka. I don't think many people are surprised about that, but I do think that people had this misconception that this was a happy family, that maybe there was some intrigue between all of them, but no, this was like real palace intrigue. This was, they loathed, right? There was no, they just made it work. They made it work. They kept themselves separate, even though, Ivanka tried to do a lot that Melania wanted to do, and Melania had the ability. Again, I was a pain in the ass for Ivanka because every time she tried to do something, I was there. I was the only bully pit. I was the only person there protecting
her.
Like bodyguard. Yeah,
I really was. That East Wing, when Jared's people came over to look at the office space, I literally was on the floor like with Post-its, like conference room, communications room, staff office, because they really planned on taking it all over.
Wow. And so I think that explains also, Jordy, sorry to interrupt your flow. There was the video from, when they held the RNC event on the White House lawn, which I still cannot believe they did that event. But if you remember, there was the moment where Ivanka walks past Melania and you just see the daggers, from her eyes shoot as she walks past.
Well, let me tell you, that event is what threw me over the top. Really, is the following day, I started writing an article for the Daily Beast, and it was titled Blood on Her Hands. And I have to tell you, Melania, not that moment. That moment was typical for me, right? I'd seen it. Melania and I had laughed at Ivanka. Melania, we also cried. I cried. When Melania cried, it was a laugh. She laughed so hard that she would have tears in her eyes. But she never cried in front of me. I cried all the time. And, but that day, to actually see them use the White House as their backdrop really infuriated me. And I found it to be so inappropriate that I began to get myself more involved in the trenches of not just who Melania is as a person, but how she was politically using the office to help Donald.
So to that, how do you think Melania will be remembered 20, 40, 60 years down the line?
Well, I think that I have crashed I think that I've helped crash the notion that she is a mysterious Sphinx-like figure. At least I hope I did, because that had been my goal in all of my interviews, was to make sure that people didn't have this feeling of empathy towards this woman who they felt was locked up and imprisoned by Donald, because no way, shape, or form is she. Again, I know how difficult it is for people to understand, because it took me so long myself to come to terms with that, because on the outside, you see this beautiful woman. I mean, many people correlate beauty on the outside. You think, oh, maybe that's it's a beautiful person, but that's all she is, right? She is skin deep, and it's unfortunate. And when I see her posts, when I see that she's doing something for children, I think back when I actually was working with experts and think tanks and people that genuinely care about children and are making a difference. And she went along with it, and I believed she cared. And I wish she had so told me that she just doesn't give a shit.
Right.
And that she had no plans to do anything except, play dress up, because I wouldn't have given up my life to move to DC to not only just plan the inauguration, but to set up the East Wing for her and to create her initiative and work with Yale University, social emotional learning, and all the other people that came to the table to actually really work on a platform that when I was thrown under the bus, it ended and moved away with me.
Let me ask you this, Stephanie, also. You mentioned the NFTs, you mentioned kind of a bunch of the things that she's doing now. Does that surprise you? Like the current behavior and the current conduct? And let me ask you that one first, because the next one is going to be a good one and it involves Jen. So let me ask you the first one. Does that surprise you?
Does it surprise me that Melania is doing NFTs?
Not just NFTs, just all of the conduct post presidency, and doing NFTs like that's not exactly keeping the lowest of profiles.
So in a nutshell, I do remember when there were articles written about Melania in which she actually sued the Daily Mail and a few other journalists for writing things about her past that were not true. And I do remember that the White House and Charles Harder, her lawyer, had put out a piece about the First Lady, that this, affecting her ability to, I have to use the right word, profit off of being the First Lady, and that was not what she was doing at the time, but that by hurting her reputation or defaming her, whether or not she was what those journalists have written about. Let me go back and answer that question. I am not surprised at all by Melania taking a back seat to disappearing after Donald has lost. That is who she is. She likes to remain in the background. But if there is an opportunity for Melania to make her own money and to still need to be relevant because she needs it, as many people say she doesn't, it's her way of doing it without actually having to come out to the public, right? You don't see her speaking about it. You don't see her in an interview. You don't hear her voice. Right? She's not writing the press releases. She's not doing any of that. So for her, am I surprised? I'm not surprised by anything because it's other people that are actually helping her move along. It's the same thing when she, had her own cosmetic line.
Right.
It was, Melania Trump. But it actually it was just Melania, because Ivanka already was using the, trademark of Trump on the Ivanka Trump everything. So, Melania didn't have that opportunity to use Trump. So Melania didn't do so great, and it did well, but it didn't do so great. The company closed down. And I think this is now her opportunity to use the good graces of the American people who still actually believe that they are decent people. And beyond that, think that the election was stolen, which is Melania's ability right now, I guess, before Donald gets indicted or convicted or arrested or something, to make sure that she gets her fair time to make something off of at least being the First Lady.
As we're recording this in the holiday season, famously in your conversations with her, we know that she clearly hates Christmas.
Well, here's the thing. I can't say, oh my God. So I can't say whether or not she hates Christmas because it's all about gift giving, but I do know that she hated planning the Christmas activities at the White House. And we all know that, right? Obviously. I put out the tape, and there's something I do want to say about the tapes, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I think it's important for people to understand that I never pressed record on Melania until after, and this was in 2018, after she told me that she was going to, actually, it was right after she had told me she had met with the White House counsel, and they told her that there was a possible investigation into the Presidential Inauguration Committee. And she was not going to be allowed to say anything on my behalf, that I wasn't involved, that, however, she knew the truth. She knew that I'd hired a lawyer. She knew everything. But she was going to have to, obviously, in her mind, she felt she was going to have to live by what the White House counsel told her, which was that Donald and she were putting out a statement that they were, very upset how the money was spent and that they were throwing this on me. It was after that conversation. And it wasn't even like a pre-planned moment for me. It was a petrified moment when everything that I had been saying to she and Donald were coming true, but it was now being placed on the blame on me, as me opposed to me being the one saying to them, all of these people are doing these things they shouldn't be doing.
I want to break it down for you just so that people know. Like,
please do.
You were being set up, and you realized you were being set up to take the fall, and they were recording you. They were putting you in a position where all of the conduct that they engaged in, which we won't characterize other than to say it's all being investigated at very high levels. You were their fall person. And in the Trump orbit, they always have a fall person in different layers. And the moment you realized you were their fall person, you had to take steps to protect yourselves. And but for being the fall person, you wouldn't have done that. And before that, one of the reasons they made you the fall person is because you wouldn't take their shit, right? You wouldn't sit there and allow them to do things that are being investigated for being unlawful, and you would call them out for it. So you were the fall person. You weren't playing ball. They were going to pin this all on you. And you said, not only do I have to protect myself, but I have to protect the country. And then with releasing those recordings, I don't even think you have to make any defense of it. Like, you risked your life. I want people to know that, like, the death threats and everything that you've gone through, you risked your life in showing those recordings. I bet you get death threats frequently, right?
Enough that it's, look,
any death threat but you've gotten multiple death threats. And
yes, and standing up to these people.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, standing up to the Trumps and their inner circle is a scary process. And that's why I believe Melania had my back and I had hers, because I felt like it was the two of us against everyone else at the beginning. I kept my shades closed for 2 years after all of this had happened. I don't say that lightly. There is a group of them, or group of Trump's inner circle that everyone's aware of, and they've been out, in the news and the headlines. But there is such a constituency that no one is aware of, and there's also a constituency that no one's even focused on yet that is that are on the front lines. So there are a lot of cronies that are willing to do anything. And I'm not talking about supporters. I'm talking about individuals that are involved in the machinations of this group of, So yes, I was frightened. And I have to tell you, what was one of the worst things, and Jordy brought this up earlier, was that when the Southern District of New York sent me a grand jury subpoena, I was not seen as and this was in October of 2018. I didn't know if I was a witness or if I was being investigated because of what the headlines had done. And so it took that interview for the prosecutors to understand my role and involvement, because they had heard the recordings that Michael Cohen had taped of me. And that's what opened up the SDNY's investigation. From that, the fear of knowing that I was being held liable for the criminal activities and behaviors of others wouldn't fly by me. And not only did not have to fly by me, I have always been a record keeper. I have always been someone who is so type A it's scary. And that's one of my problems is I'm so laser focused and I have tunnel vision when I get involved in something. And so should I have run away? Yes. But I wouldn't back out of something I agreed to do. And loyalty is my Achilles heel.
Stephanie, in regards to any of the current ongoing investigations into Trump and the Trump family, have you been contacted? I don't even know if you'd be able to necessarily tell us, but have you been contacted by any, AGs, DAs, anybody as part of these investigations to get information on what you may know?
I've been involved in 3 different investigations. I can't talk about them, but I know they're ongoing, and one is definitely moving forward. And that one I can actually speak about, which is the United States Attorney General for the District of Columbia's. It's a civil suit with Attorney General Karl Racine. And as the lead witness for that investigation into the spending at the Trump International Hotel, I, again, was not okay with the family lining their own pockets and being the beneficiaries of monies coming in from even though it was privately raised, from the inauguration into and for Trump and Ivanka, Don Jr. and Eric. So I understand that case is now going to trial.
And Stephanie, as we kind of approach 2022, the January 6th committee, I think that's one of the things Brett may have been alluding to also, seems to be, enclosing on, high level people, and we'll see what goes on there. We got all these other, investigations. I mean, your experience of dealing with like Melania, how does she, kind of process those things? Does she just completely ignore them and drown them out? Is she part of like the planning sessions from the PR perspective of how to deal with that with Don? Like, what's her role that you witnessed in those crises? And do you think that she's involved from a strategic standpoint in any of the kind of decisions that we see, whether it's like Trump suing Letitia James in like a bullshit bogus lawsuit that has no merit whatsoever and things like that?
She wouldn't be involved in she wouldn't even know that he was suing Letitia James, right? Like until she actually probably saw it on CNN or
until
Fox News or wherever. Yeah. I mean, she would find out about it just like the rest of us found out about it, which was, the media, which Melania constantly referred to as when anyone attacked her or said anything about her that was true, but maybe unkind, that, it was called, she just said, oh, that's just the liberal media bashing. And so Melania knows everything that's going on as far as, how do I explain it? It's a little complicated because Donald does ask her for advice. He does talk to her about certain things. For example, but again, it's in the public domain. So on Twitter, if there were certain things he would write about or certain people he would give attention to, Melania would tell him, you're only making their voices louder. You're only making them known to the public. So when it came to what was happening in the White House, Melania would find things out after the fact, right? So if Donald needed her in the West Wing, it wasn't like the lead up a couple of days to needing her in the West Wing for a meeting. It was like that morning. If he was traveling to West Palm Beach for an event, Melania would know the day before. And so is she involved? She's involved enough that she knows what's going on, whether she knows it from Donald, from an aide, or from the television. And that to me shows the complicity of knowing what's going on, regardless of who's told you, and allowing it to go on, even as simply as wearing, I know I'm going backwards, but like just to wear a mask, right? Tell the children to wear a mask. She did a PSA, and that's to the point of, is this something new and different from Melania? No, she's going to try and raise her awareness because she likes to be photographed and she likes to be seen. But the messaging, she doesn't mean anything. She doesn't actually mean it from a wholesome place. And it's the same thing when it comes to what's going on right now. She will make her visits, say hello, do things. But is Melania involved in the day-to-day with Donald? No. Does she know what's going on? Yes. Could she say something? Yes. Does she sometimes say something? Yes. Does that? I hope that answers it a little bit. I know it's because it is complicated as to her involvement. And I'm not there and I haven't spoken to her. So I can't say for sure. But one thing Melania is intelligent. And I know most listeners don't fully understand that yet. But when it comes to Melania and Barron and her family, she is really intelligent. She is smart. She is deceptive. She is deceiving, and she will do whatever it takes to make sure that they are encapsulated, protected, and taken care of. And if that means keeping her mouth shut, that means keeping her mouth shut.
Stephanie, as we conclude this interview, first off, we want to just so much thank you for your time. You have so many supporters out there, who wanted to hear from you. We, of course, wanted to hear from you as we move into the new year. In general, do you have any messages, for, all the Americans out there who have followed your journey and will continue to follow your journey, and who are, going into 2022 are scared, they're nervous. They see the fascism, from the GQP. They see that, Trump was a symbol, but that the problem is deeply rooted, and that Trumpism is intrinsic in what the Republican Party is now. And so what do you say to people like that who are worried, just they see in these Christmas cards with Representative Massey and Boebert with the AR-15s, and when people are kind of traumatized now, what do you say to them going into 2022 about what we could do, for this country?
Well, first I want to wish everyone a happy new year. If, the upcoming holidays, really enjoy your family time, enjoy one another. But I relate to everyone that feels scared or uncertainty with the future. But what I have to say is to always remain strong, because we're all going to get depressed. I have PTSD from everything that I experienced. And I know the country has PTSD just witnessing it. Yeah. So my messaging really is that I do believe that justice will be served. And I do believe that there are enough of us. There's never enough, but there are many of us that have tried to educate and raise awareness as to the true identity of the Trump family and their inner circle of people, that everything that they say, I understand people who follow them believe them, but people need to really take a big step back and understand how deceptive everything is, and how this family lies, right? It is all about perception for them. And I just want people to take matters into their own hands, or at least try to get along with one another, regardless of their political, view, and try and speak to one another again, just hear one another out, and to hope. And I look at the January 6th committee and the unbelievable strength of Liz Cheney and her team, or the team itself. And I'm thankful. We all have to be thankful. I'm thankful that the January 6th committee was formed. I'm thankful for all the voices out there like you guys, MeidasTouch, in being a voice of truth. And I do say this isn't about left versus right, but right versus wrong. I just wish everyone would take care of themselves, get their first shot of their COVID shot, get their second shot, get their booster shot. And we've seen the science, it works. And I've had my booster shot. And regardless of what happens to Trump personally is separate of what we as a country need to do. And I just, I know you guys leave yourselves open to anyone that wants to have a conversation. I leave myself open to anyone that wants to have a conversation to get to the bottom of the truth. Because at the end of the day, there's another generation, my children that will be here. I want there to be a country that they can be proud of, and also people that they can look up to.
Well, I'm sure they're proud of you. The country and the nation is proud of you and owes you a great gratitude. And so thank you for everything. Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, thank you so much for joining us on the special holiday edition of MeidasTouch podcast. Of course, make sure if you haven't gotten the book, I don't know what you're doing, but make sure you purchase Melania and Me, The Rise and Fall of My Friendship with the First Lady, the #1 New York Times bestseller. Stephanie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
And
have a happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
What's up, Midas Mighty? Our next partner has a product that I literally use every single day. So I started taking Athletic Greens because my mornings are just so hectic. There's never enough time in the day. And I always wake up just so exhausted and I have so many things to do. So what I do is I start my day with a scoop of Athletic Greens. It gets me up, it gets me running, it brings clarity. You ever have like brain fog feeling? I know I often get that brain fog feeling, that inability to really even think and process information. Athletic Greens really helps me in those moments and provides a lot of clarity that I need to do the work that I do. So what is Athletic Greens anyway? Well, with one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, aging, all of the things. So one thing I love about it also, and why I like recommending it to so many people, is it's lifestyle friendly. So whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free, you can have Athletic Greens. And tons of people take some kind of multivitamin. Well, it's important that you choose one with high quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb. And it costs less than $3 a day. So you're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit, which I definitely have to kick. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. I know so many people, I used to have these just packages of these pills to take every single day, but now I know I get all the nutrients I need in one glass of Athletic Greens. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. And all you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Midas. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/MEIDAS to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And now back to the MeidasTouch podcast.
Welcome back to the MeidasTouch podcast. Ben, Brett, Jordy, great interview.
The insight that
Stephanie
Stephanie's able to give is really fascinating.
I was going to say, it sounds like she knows some things. I'll tell you
one thing, she knows that Melania just absolutely despises Ivanka, and I find that just so hilarious.
Yeah, well, it's funny because like the clip I brought up with her, you can see those moments on camera and those looks.
Yeah.
But to actually get it confirmed from the former best friend who actually literally knows that she was the bodyguard who was told to push her far away when she's coming. Oh no, she's coming down the hallways. Let's get Ivanka away. Legitimately stuff like that was happening. And I just think it's very funny to confirm it, but a lot of real important information that I think she shared with us, and excited to see how her story progresses and to see what comes of all this. I mean, she's witnessed so much corruption, and thankfully she did step up, right, guys? Because they were going to pin all that on her. And like you said earlier, Ben, when you have the most powerful man in the world and the most powerful office in the world and the most powerful country in the world setting their sights on you, it leaves you in a very delicate, very precarious situation where any decision that you make can affect the rest of your life. And so I am incredibly, just happy that she shared her story and came out and just said, this is the corruption that I was experiencing. This is what they tried to pin on me, and just say it and just speak with investigators and tell her story. I think it's so important.
Incredibly emotional interview too, but a very motivating interview. And I'm glad we got to share it with everybody in the holiday season and the holiday spirit. And so want to give a special shout out to all of our sponsors. Make sure you support them and use the promo codes. go back and listen again. I said this with the Anthony Scaramucci interview that we did, on the previous episode. Go back and listen to all of what Stephanie Winston Wolkoff had to say. It's a lot to unpack, but it will leave you knowing that any one of you can make a major, major difference. So I want to thank all of you for listening to this special holiday edition of the MeidasTouch podcast. And I want to let you know that we're not done. We're going to keep giving you new content, and a new episode coming same time as always. So Ben, Brett, Jordy, want to thank you all so much. Happy holidays, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Shout out to the Meidas Mighty!